Good evening, South Brunswick, and good evening to my fellow board members and to all here at the dais today. Can we please rise and we call an order and salute to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act was enacted to ensure the rights of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board Secretary has caused notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, to be posted in the South Brunswick Public Library and the Board Office, filed with the Township Clerk, and communicated to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger. Mr. Pulowski, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Deepa Karthik. Mr. Roger Krishna. Mr. Ray Keener. Sorry,
Here.
I have my glasses on. Mrs. Joyce Mehta.
Here.
Mr. Mike Mitchell.
Present.
Dr. Smitha Raj. Mrs. Lisa Rogers.
Here.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti.
Here.
Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Motion first for the executive session. I need a motion. We're going to move into executive session.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Seconding. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of South Brunswick hereby moves into executive session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 104.6 through 104.21, to discuss the following: residency hearing. All in favor? No. All in favor? Aye. Can I please have a motion to return back into open public session?
So moved, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson, seconded by Dr. Raj. Thank you.
Anywhere's good. Anywhere's good. Anywhere's good. Check out what they're wearing. These guys are wearing good clothes over there.
Can we please have a moment of silence following the tragic death of one of our students, Diana Somariba, please? Thank you. Moving on, can we have a motion for the approval of the minutes of January? Can we have an approval of the agenda, please? Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Anybody opposed? Seeing none? Thank you, Mr. Pulowski. Moving on to the approval of minutes, the board minutes of January 6th, 2022. Can we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Nathanson and Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much. Moving on to the report of the student representative, Victoria.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing well and in the Valentine's Day spirit. So, speaking of Valentine's Day, let's start off with activities. Our student council has been selling carnations to be delivered to their friends on Valentine's Day. We recognize the National Heart Health Awareness Day on February 4th. This month is Black History Month. We are honoring our Black staff members by interviewing our Black staff. We will have posters to highlight these individuals. Everyone is invited to the Art Club Winter Art Gallery. The Art Club is displaying art work at South Brunswick Senior Center on March 2nd. Please see the SB Senior Center website or call them for hours that they are open. Medical masks or K9N5 masks are required there. No cloth masks, please. Save the date. Temptation, March 26th. Mr. SHBS, April 1st. And the spring musical, The Addams Family, will be held on May 5th and 7th. So, for athletics, the girls bowling, second in the GMC team tournament, fourth place in the group of fifth in sectionals. Boys bowling, but second in the GMC team tournament, and Kelly Forth earned her 100th win this season. For girls basketball, Jeffrey Johnson, the most winning coach for the girls basketball program, 116 wins. Congratulations. For girls swimming, fourth place in the GMC championship, Grace Soro Chen broke her own backstroke school record, and the fourth seed for state tournament quarterfinals Friday. Boys swimming, fourth at the GMC championship, fifth seed for the state tournament, reached the quarterfinals. For the signing parties that were held the following senior athletes: Melanie LaCourte for Lehigh University for track and field, Jay Patel for Rutgers University for football, Brian Morales for Colgate University for football, Omar Abdelaziz for Wagner College for football, as well as Joseph Takina for Wagner College for football. That is all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Moving on to the report of the Superintendent of Schools. Mr. Feder, please.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. And I was going to start with some really good news. So if you remember our last meeting, we had our VFW. You heard from our students, and you also heard from their chosen victor in that part of the stage of the awards in Bess Lee, our Crossroads South teacher, and you saw how eloquent she was. Well, she has finished second place at the whole state level. So that's Bess. She's incredible and awesome. So I wanted to share that with you. Another very cool thing. This is really cool, and we thank our Education Foundation for what I'm going to share. Everyone know on Route 1, I know you guys know, on Route 1, the new billboard, right? So on that new billboard, they were able to put up a beautiful thanking to all of our staff for all they've done. So thank you to the Ed Foundation. That's a really cool thing. And I'm pretty sure Murph is going to want to start using that billboard now for something. I don't know what yet, but we're going to see Murph-related billboard things going on up there. So watch out for the Murph storm of whatever's going to happen on that billboard. All right, so down to some business. We have some calendar revision topics we need to share. I shared these with the board, but I just want to make sure we're clear. So the state last week, or 2 weeks ago, came out with the plan for high school graduation testing. So this is a junior test. And we also have to have this test done the week of March 14th. We really have no say in this, and to manage a school that has 750 juniors, we need to adjust our school day for those 4 days of the test. The days are 14th, 15th, Wednesday is a no, 17th and 18th. So what we need to do on those days are delay the school for the 9th, 10th, and 12th graders, and we still need to have the 11th graders come in. So that's what's going to happen. So the 11th graders will come in normal time, then the 9th, 10th, and 12th graders will come in for a delay. It's actually longer than a normal delay because we need to have enough time to do what we need to do, but it still does meet the 4-hour requirement of instruction for school days. So again, that's a change in the calendar. We did not have these delayed openings in the calendar because, well, we didn't know this was happening at the time. One other one that we are going to do, which we're also asking you to approve tonight, is on April 4th, we are going to have an early release day for elementary schools only so that we can host our parent-teacher conferences. So more information will come out about all of those things to the kids and the families that are directly affected, but you are being asked tonight to approve that calendar shift. And again, that's for this school year, not next school year. Next school year, however, we are a little bit in a holding pattern, and we might go ahead and adopt a calendar within the next month, but there's a new bill that seemed to have some legs, then it might not have some legs. Not quite sure what's going to happen with this bill, But the bill would allow school districts, if it's passed, and again, we don't know the parameters of the bill when it gets finished, to possibly use an inclement weather day, virtual, and would still be allowed to count the day. As you know, right now, we cannot do that. So if tomorrow was a huge snowstorm, we'd have to either get our kids into school or close school. Those are the way it works. Depending on how the bill comes out, or if it comes out by a certain date, we'll adopt calendar A or calendar B. That's the question. So one calendar has some built-in snow days, one calendar does not have built-in snow days. The problem and the challenge of this is you try never to end on a Monday. You want to try to end as close to that Friday as you can. So right now the calendar butts up against June 24th, which is a Friday. If we don't do a bunch of different things to get it and then we add days in, it'll go to the next week, and that's really late for school to end. So we're working on that. We'll come back to you, but we want to let you know that's the reason it's kind of up in the air right now. It's waiting on this bill to see how it works out. I was asked by a reporter recently about what I thought of the bill. I'll share a little bit. I would hate to see the concept of a snow day completely gone. I think the idea of a snow day is something kids love and look forward to. I think staff looks forward to a snow day. You guys look forward to snow days? Oh, yeah. So, I would hate to see the whole concept gone. However, there are times where it'd be appropriate. And so I would like some flexibility to be able to do that. And we'll wait and see how they go ahead and word the bill, or if the bill winds up dying in committee and never comes out. We don't know yet. So more to come, and I'll share with you as we go. We're going to talk more about this next one as part of the presentation tonight, and it's also on our agenda for new business. The governor has changed, he said his executive order ends on March 7th for masks. How that works will be discussed a little bit later, so just know that's coming. Elementary semester 1 report cards, just to let everybody know, that'll be posted to the Genesis portal. And if you have any trouble with that, there's a help desk as well, and you can see all that through Genesis. All right, more great news, and a bunch of board members and other administrators were able to be here for this. This past weekend, our VEX robotics team hosted a very large undertaking at the high school. And, it's amazing. If you've never been to a robotics competition, any of the board members that have not been to a robotics competition, figure it out next year, get to a robotics competition. It is absolutely something to see. Our kids are blow away amazing. And the outcome of this particular event, we had 6 teams in the event, and we have 5 of those 6 teams are going to the state tournament in March. That's amazing. We had a team win, we had all kinds of awards. We had Tournament of Champions winners. We had, what was that? Judges. Yeah, we had the Judges Award winner. It was just incredible what these robots can do. They try not to let me go near the robots. I don't know why. I'd be really good. I know I could do it. I know I can. I think I can. They don't let me touch the robots. Really exciting, but also, Pinky Parikh has been running this show, the biggest advocate in the universe for robotics for kids. And Pinky has told us this is her last year. We've denied her request. She has been told she'll be to a lifetime appointment, kind of like a Supreme Court justice. She's disagreeing right now, but we have time to convince her otherwise. But Pinky was selected as the Robotics Volunteer of the Year in the state of New Jersey. So awesome, well-deserved. If any of you know Pinky, do whatever you have to do to get her to stay. Okay? Guys, everyone chip in, figure it out, get it done. Got to keep her. That's just huge for us. I'm going to finish with a topic of board and community relations. That topic comes up as to how to best manage that. And I think our last board meeting was rather interesting, a little different than our previous 4.5 years of board meetings for me. The community sees that, and I'm sure they have questions as to what's going on and all that. So it's important that the board, and we'll be doing a lot more community relations work and all of that as a board. But I wanted to bring that up, that we understand that to the community. Our goal is to continue to do everything that's great for kids, and that we're going to continue that goal. So again, tonight I'm going to share on two topics. We do our 60-day program where we talk about all things COVID related. That's part of the mandate. And then we're also going to talk about triples, busing, and all of that. And we'll get into that in a minute. But before I move on, as always, any board members have any questions about anything I have brought up? Deepa.
So I had a question regarding the board and the community relations.
Okay.
And there was a suggestion by a parent who reached out to me asking, if board members can reach out to the community in an open forum, sort of, just kind of do maybe an open Zoom session to get some feedback from the community as we represent them. So I wanted to understand if there are any restrictions on the board members trying to do this in an open and transparent way, not to solution anything, but just to gather feedback from the community. And if there are any restrictions on sitting board members who are not in a campaign phase.
So, sitting board member having their own personal kind of session for the community?
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The reality is that would not be, it's not a good idea. It's would be a bit inappropriate, mainly because this board actually, so anyone on this board would remember that was on the board last year. One of our main goals was something called chain of command. If board members, just imagine for a minute, Deepa, if 9 of you each held their own personal Zoom sessions, then what would happen is you can't say anything anyway. A board member has no individual authority of any kind. The board only acts as a group, a whole. So an individual cannot act on their own in that format. So what would happen is anyone who has anything to share with the board, by law, we have a mechanism every meeting. And the mechanism we have is public comment, which in this district happens twice. Once they can come and talk about public comment about an agenda item, or they can come and talk about any topic of any kind related to the schools, even sometimes not related to the schools, but they have the access to do that. So the idea of an individual board member acting upon their own, specifically in the oath of office as well as in ethics, there's no legitimate authority of any kind for a board member. And acting as such on their own, on behest of the board, would actually be a violation of the ethics. So for that reason, I would say that's a no. But the concept of wanting to gather feedback from the community is good. So when thinking about that, that might be something the board, as a board, might want to consider as to how do we do that as a whole group. But for me, my heart starts to palpitate when I think of 9 individual members kind of gathering grievances on their own. And by the ethics training we had the other night, you are bound when a grievance comes to you to share it with me. So now I might not be able to breathe anymore. Because if 9 of you are giving me all the things you hear, where you create an opportunity for anyone to come and share with them, knowing that you can't speak, it's just a very dangerous, possibly even destructive process that could be used.
Understood.
Thank you. President, anything separate or different, or
Thank you, Mr. Feder.
would you agree with that summation?
I think there's definitely, restrictions on board members, definitely. I'm saying about the restrictions that we have as a board. I think that there's definite restrictions.
So that's a no then, right?
I think you gave a great explanation. I think that is a little bit more complicated. We've actually, in the NJSBA training, when they do new board member trainings, this comes up time and time again. So I think that it would be interesting, it would be very useful to you to, as well to see what they have to say. It's a complicated process, and what the do's are, the don'ts are, they explain it very well, just as Mr. Feder has done as well.
No, I'm just going to reconfirm, this is a don't.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thanks again, Deepa. By the way, just one more thing. You've been on the board for about 3 minutes. And what I think is awesome, to be honest with you, I'm being very serious, is that, you know, you're selecting and making a choice to learn as you go. And you've been doing that like voracious reader in your attempt to keep learning what we do and how to best occupy. I just think the community should see that as a strength. And I really thank you for posing that question.
Thank you, Mr.
Even though you gave me heart palpitations, I still appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, Scott, I have something to say about the snow days and the bill that may be coming out soon.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so how about this? Snow days, half a day school. How about that?
So when a snow day comes, depending on the actual weather, we would be able to determine. But you're saying, I think if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying if we do have a
Yeah, if the bill is passed.
like we did. We did a snow day and called it an early release day.
Right,
So that the day still ended where they could still get out and play.
absolutely.
I hear you. Thanks, Mike. Good stuff. All right. All right.
Presentation.
Presentation.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the presentation, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Feder again so that he can introduce the plan for the safe return in person, interaction and continuity of service.
So we're doing two presentations. I'm going to pull this down. Transportation. Oh, that's loud. And the update on COVID and all that's going on with that. So we'll start with transportation and the school start times. The first thing I'm going to do a little bit of training. I might even ask for some of our audience. We have some of our drivers here tonight. So if I mess this up, I don't want a bad grade. So what we did with this committee, and to kind of help out the community understand, we gave some terms that we use in talking about transportation. And so I'm just going to go really quick. I'm not going to do all of this like we did with the committee, but we have to teach the committee kind of the things we were talking about. A route package, as we call it, is when a driver and a bus do a series of runs. They might do an elementary school. You pick up the kids, you drop them off at the school, then the bus keeps going to the next school, or the next pick up more kids, drop them off at the next school. That's a route package. Sometimes you can do one a day, sometimes you can do two a day. In fact, in our district, you generally do two a day. However, we love our drivers. Our drivers rule. However, right now, we only have 31 of our drivers, and we need more of our drivers. So, when we don't have that, we outsource. So we currently have 31 of our own drivers. This is for regular routes, not for special education routes, which are handled a little bit differently. And we have 58 outsourced runs. I will tell you, and this board has heard me say this before, I'm not just saying it because these guys are in the audience, when we hear problems with transportation, it's always the same. It's not our people. It's the outsourced drivers. So we want to change that. So just understand that. Keep that in the back of your head. A tier is I do a run. I just take all the kids, I pick them up, I go to the elementary school, I drop them off, that's a tier, done. Okay? In-house, I just talked about, contractor, the outsourcing. A double is when I do 2 tiers. A triple would be if I do 3 tiers. Now, in some cases, some of our drivers do 3 tiers because we have the AM music run, or we have an after-school late bus run. So they might do 1 school, a second school, and then an after-school run, or music, a run, and a run. So that's a triple when you do 3. A quad would be 4. Courtesy and hazards, we're going to move on. We're not addressing those. Interestingly, which is a huge important thing, the board had a goal this year. One of the board goals up there, which is basically we got to deal with transportation. Now, I still don't know how in the world our drivers and the transportation office does this every day. We're down sometimes double digits. Is it usually double digit? More than that. Drivers a day, and we have to still get these runs done. So we have mechanics driving, we have maintenance people driving, we have anyone with a CDL getting on a bus. I said, to be a board member from now on, you should have to have a CDL. That should be a requirement to become a board member, in my opinion. I think, and maybe the assistant superintendent of C&I should get a CDL as well. Maybe Lisa should not have a CDL. So we have this committee meeting, and we want to make sure we all understand what our goal is. The immediate goal of this is managing the fiscal impact of transportation, right? So one, we wanted our drivers to be in a competitive market. So we helped start taking care of that. The cost to transport in an outsourced run is going to go up skyrocketing. So I know we had a recent quote, and if y'all know Ray does this for a living as well. A recent quote we received for an outsourced run was $1,000 a day. I offered to do it for $900, but $1,000 a day for a run. That's $180,000 a year. That was to bus one kid to one school. That was that cost. The run we took was $550, I believe was the number we took, right, Dave? So $550 a day for one kid to one run. So the cost of transportation has skyrocketed. So I'm going to explain what we're looking to do to fix that. So we also, to do that, one way is decreasing the number of route packages. We want to have less of those, but we want more of our drivers. So that's interesting, right? We want less runs, but more of our drivers. So how do we do that? Then another big component of the work was exploring the concept of a high school starting later due to all of the research about sleep and the value of high schoolers sleeping later, okay? So that's another piece to this puzzle. And ultimately, nothing we want to do hurts what we already do for kids. We don't want to make decisions that would inhibit kids. So not many goals, but that's the work, and that's what the committee's been working on. The committee's met 5 times. I added an extra meeting because we had some work to do. And parents, the community received a survey today. The staff received a survey today. Did you guys do your survey? You did it? All right. Felicia? No? Michelle? Michelle? Come on, Michelle. No sleep. Survey, then sleep. So, and the students from 7th grade through 12th grade also are doing the survey, so we can hear from them as well on these things. So all of those surveys are really important. We hope people spend the time filling those out and giving the details, so that helps us. And we'll go back to the committee once we summarize that. Those are due Monday, by the way. Due Monday, because we need time to crunch the work. So that's kind of where we've been. We've been doing that work, and we're at this phase of getting that feedback. So I want to just show you some quick numbers, and this is what I want you to understand. We currently, if you look at 21-22, the first row, have 89 of these route packages. And of those 80, this is, again, not special education special runs. This is just the regular education runs. It's not that special ed's lesser or not lesser. It's just we just handle it differently. But you can see we have 31 in-house packages and then 58 contractors. We can't maintain that. We don't want to maintain that. We don't want 58 contracted routes. So if you look at, if we do, just think of this, if we maintain that, and that's all we do is roll over exactly what we do this year into next year, our early estimates from like October were that was going to cost us about $1.2 million to just do the exact same thing we're doing now. That estimate is no longer $1.2 million. It is closer to $2 million to do exactly what we're doing now, next year. Well, if we have to spend $2 million more on transportation, that means $2 million is coming from somewhere. And where does it come from? It comes from things that kids need. That's what happens, right? We're a school. You lose money, it comes from kids. So we have to come up with a way that avoids that. Also, what we know from our drivers is they want more hours. They want stability and more hours. Our drivers. That's what we're focusing on. So look at what happens in this concept of moving from what we currently do to triples. In that scenario, we reduce the number of route packages by at least 20. It could be higher, but it's at least 20. But look what happens to our in-house numbers. We're not taking it from our people. No way. We take it from the contracted routes. And not only that, but we take back more routes of our own. Now, we have far more control of our transportation system that way and get to bring in more high-quality drivers. Okay? So that plan has a higher cost, but a manageable higher cost. And the cost is because, well, it costs more to do transportation now. It's the reality. It's the world we live in right now. So we can't avoid that. But what we can do is make smart decisions for the district. And in this case, it's increasing our in-house people and decreasing our contracted routes quite significantly. Not quite in half, but pretty close to half. That's a great move for the district, a great move for our drivers, and I think ultimately an amazing decision that will help our district in the long term. So that's that plan. How do we do that? Well, again, that's the money. You can see it's a difference of about $1.5 million to do this. That's about it's not a savings, and this I keep getting caught up. I'm going to make sure I say it right. It's not that we're saving, we're just not spending. My wife continues to tell me that's how she does things. Honey, I'm saving you all this money by just spending. What? I don't get that. She convinces me it's the way it works. So, back to what I said, we're looking for those three groups. I know before this meeting started, I think the last time I looked was 5 o'clock. I think we were about 600 or 700 staff, 1,000 community, and about 900 students already by that time. So by now, I have no idea what it is. It could be almost double the number. Victoria? Victoria.
Sorry.
All right. Count on you tonight, Victoria,
Next
tomorrow.
time.
Go to sleep, do homework tonight. Tomorrow you fill it out. So the next big deal. We have to take the feedback, apply that, and on the 24th, before the 24th, we'll be sharing information with the board. But on the 24th, you're going to be asked, we're going to make a recommendation, and you'll be asked to address the recommendation. The reason we are on a tight timeline, and we cannot do, I can tell you, normally, you take a year or more to do this kind of study. We don't have a year. And the reason we don't have a year is if anything to do with transportation, if you don't get the bids out and have your plan by March, whatever you think you're going to pay is going to skyrocket by April. So we are on a tight timeline that is out of the board's control and out of my control. This needs to happen when it needs to happen. And we would like to have studied more, but we can't. So we did the best we could in the amount of time we had. And on the 24th, we will present a full plan that includes the school start times. And the school start times is a giant piece. One of the elements that is a must-do to get to triples is currently, just keep this in your mind. Here's how it works. Right now, if you are thinking transportation, the day starts with AM music at the middle school. That's about 28, 29 runs. Is that about right? I think it's about that. After that comes the high school. After the high school comes the middle school. Right around the same time as the middle school are Indian Fields, Brooks Crossing, Dayton, and Deans. Then after that are the 5 smallest elementary schools. So when you think of the math, the high school, who has 2,800, 2,900 kids, a lot of those kids drive. So that's one group of kids. The middle school has about 2,100 kids, but all of them need the bus, right? And Indian Fields and Brooks. So you're busing a lot of kids. Elementary only has the 5 schools left. Not many kids to bus left, and a lot of those kids walk. So we're out of need by the time you get to the late elementary schools, and it's not efficient. So to be more efficient, all 7 elementary schools and Dayton and Deans will need to be on the same time frame. They have to move away. And what needs to happen is someone needs to go first, someone needs to go second, and then someone needs to go third. That has to happen. If that doesn't happen, we're back to that. And the $2 million still might be a low estimate, to be honest with you, when all is said and done. We can't do that. I, in good conscience, cannot recommend to the Board of Education to spend $2 million new dollars to do what we're doing now. We have to make a change. What I do know about change is good, bad, or indifferent, it causes stress. It causes chaos, depending on the level of change. So in the work, we have to consider that as well. What is level of change and what kind of change? So just understand all of that is factored in. And now I'll give you the bad news. I am 1,000,000% sure everybody will not be happy. It's a guarantee. If I know anything in my life, I have yet to make a decision that makes everybody happy. And this one will definitely not make everyone happy. Will some people be happy? Absolutely. Will a lot of people be happy? I hope so. Will some people be very upset? Yes. That will include staff, that will include students, and that will include parents. Happy and sad. But we have to make a decision that's best for the district and best for all that we can do, and that's what we're working towards. Again, very short timeline, but we will have a solid, clear, concise recommendation for the board at our next board meeting. So with that said, before I move to that, I'll open up to the board for any questions.
Just
There we go. Thank you, Scott. Very good presentation, even if I don't get the CDL. So going back to the one slide that had the money and the route numbers, the 6675 at 89 routes and $6 million at 69 routes. One more.
Right.
There we go. So just rough calculation. So can you help me understand, was this just a number that you kind of looked at, why we are looking at 69 packages with 33, and I'm just looking at the highlight, 33 drivers. Is that your optimal solution, the 69, or is that a number that you're looking at and saying, okay, from a feasibility perspective, we could go 68, 72? You know what I'm saying? So is that your optimal solution, that 69, or is that just an example?
That includes the transportation department mapping out the whole thing.
Okay.
That comes to that. The only way to make the number go down further
Right.
is if we eliminated things like courtesy busing.
Okay. So even though the cost of the route will go up, because if just a rough estimate I did, right? 89 at 6.6 is 75,000 a route versus 69 versus is 87.5. We're seeing an increase in the route, but we would be able to cover the goals that you had positioned.
The reason the increase in the route is the time.
Right, the time. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, if someone does 2 runs, it's less time than if I do 3 runs.
Right, okay. That's fine. Thank you.
anybody else to my right? Any questions? Seeing none. Anybody to my left? Any questions? None. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Feder.
If people do have public comment about this, it's going to come
At the end.
not at the end, but after, when public comment comes, there's 2 public comments that are going to happen.
Yep.
One is going to come after I do this presentation. That's only on this, so just think for a minute, anyone in the audience who's looking to do a comment, when I finish this, there will be a public comment specifically and solely for the topic of this plan related to COVID. If you're looking to make a comment on anything else, including transportation, that's going to come at the actual public comment section. This is a mandate by the state of New Jersey that we do this, so just keep that in mind. We'll go pretty quick through this. This one's pretty fast. All right, so as I said, every 60 days we are required by state mandate to do a presentation to the public, inclusive of a public comment related to all issues associated with COVID-related matters. All stems from something called the Road Forward, which was put out last summer. Hard to believe it, but it's not changed. That's another story for another day, or another article I'll write for the newspapers. But it has not changed. However, things have changed. The biggest one coming down the pike is masks. As you know, the executive order is that ends. Right now, we all are wearing masks because it is an executive order, not a choice of the district. On March 7th, it becomes a district choice. I will say this, and actually Michelle brought this to my attention the other night. A little bit of a had a little bit of a heart murmur on that one, but the reality is the reality. This is the right currently. The federal mandate, federal, not state, is that on anything considered mass transportation, which is school buses, masks are still going to be required unless they change that. So it's a month. Things could definitely happen between now and March 7th. But it is possible that in New Jersey and other states that have already removed the mask mandate, that has not been removed on transportation. What are other states doing? I can tell you other states are not following the mask mandate on mass transportation when it comes to school buses, even though it's a federal law. I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm just informing the board and the community that as of right now on March 7th, whether or not people are going to wear masks inside the buildings is going to become a Board of Education choice. Every board can make its own decision. The federal law at this moment is not a board choice for transportation at this moment. That could change, but I'm just giving you where we are today. Okay? We're going to talk more about masks as new business so the board has a chance to discuss it in the work session. But I'm just giving you that for now. For communication, I'm communicating one major factor. We are finally out of, we went to red, then we've been in orange for forever. We're now back to yellow. I'm going to share more, but it's going the right direction, everybody. Right now, things are moving the right way. Contact tracing and quarantine instruction is something you're going to have to understand. Masks, contact tracing, and quarantine kind of all are linked. So we are hoping that might be the first time in 2 years the Department of Ed and the Department of Health collaborate, new concept, and provide school districts from the Department of Education impact of these works. You can't just do one thing because the governor said it at the pulpit. It doesn't work that way. That's not how things function. If you remove the masks, your contact tracing is going to become a major problem for kids. These kids will be home half the time because right now we are not bound when a kid has a mask and they're 3 feet apart, they're not a close contact. You remove the mask and they're 6 feet apart, they're still a close contact. So that has to be addressed. If it's not going to be addressed by the Department of Education, you will get a recommendation from me on what we need to do at that point. But right now, I don't need to make a recommendation because nothing's changing at this moment. So we're watching a little bit, and I'll explain more of that when we talk about an open session. Good news here. Look at that. First week of January, we were 257 positive staff and students. Now we're 35 this week. Huge difference, and that is trending down. If I showed you the trend each week, you would see down, 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 down. I don't know that we'll get to zero, but maybe there'll be a point where we stop counting, right, where it's no longer a counting thing. Everyone's bound by the numbers. We still keep we update our COVID dashboard, and we're doing all that, but we haven't been this low in quite some time. So this is really good news. South Brunswick is obviously trending the same as the rest of the state. And if you look at numbers across the country, you'll see that Omicron is moving its way from east to west. That's kind of what's happening. So not the whole country has not felt the full effect yet of Omicron from what the studies are saying. Anyway, we are, and that's what I care about, what's going on here, not California. So we want to share what some changes in practices we've done. These are some things that we have done. We shared this already with the community. It's out there. It's in, and the FAQ has been updated. But we've moved the quarantine time from 10 to 7. And the reason we didn't take the 10 to 5 is the 10 to 5 rule really is on the 6th day, you come back, and then you have to have all these restrictions for kids. We would have had to segregate them for lunch. It was crazy. So we kind of modified it. And we took a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B, and we came up with this plan. And it works. It's doing well so far. Been no problems, no complaints. Everything's working. We're going about our business. 7th day, whether you had COVID and you're symptom-free, or you were exposed and you're symptom-free, you come back on the 7th day and you go about your business. Again, that's a quarantine rule. If the quarantine rules, they're going to have to adjust or change, I'm telling you. You can't remove masks and not adjust the other things. You just can't. So we'll have to get to that when we get to that, but I'll explain more if we talk about that today. Travel, we've eliminated all travel quarantine except for unvaccinated international travel. That's the only quarantine left for travel. So people are pretty much, that's not happening very often. And remember, I took out our vaccine, but we have a lot of vaccinated kids, and most of our staff is vaccinated. So we're in good shape with that. We are still providing the quarantine links, and even if you're waiting for a PCR test. We were thinking about removing that. We heard from some board members and some other people that just leave it, and we left it, and that's it. I had another question from a board member, Smith, I think it was you, related to proof. And we are. The nurses get the proof and make sure that when someone tells us something, they have to provide evidence of that. So it's not just a free-for-all. This was a good question, so thank you. I made sure after you asked, so thank you. Anyway, further changes will be coming, and that's what we'll have to discuss between now and March 7th. I left this slide. It's the same slide as last 60 days ago, and I wish I could remove it, but I can't. And it's sad that I cannot. Our HIB numbers are still up. Our suspensions are still up. Our general behavior challenges are still up. And the stress and tension has not changed. Adult confrontations are up. These are things, I'm glad to say it's not only South Brunswick. I'm sad to say it's everywhere. It is the constant conversation in the field. It is not just a New Jersey thing. It's not a Middlesex County thing. The pandemic has had lots of other challenges other than COVID. And, that's talked about a lot, but when you're in the school system right now, you're seeing it every day. And, I have principals sometimes on the verge of tears, teachers on the verge of tears. I'm sure our bus drivers are probably on the verge of tears most days. It's tough. It still remains tough to be an educator right now, no matter where you're educating, no matter what your position is in the field. It's a tough thing. I'd imagine the health field's going to say the same thing, and there's other fields as well. We deal with little guys, and little guys have a hard time adjusting, some more than others. So it's impacting. And I just want to keep that on your radar, that this is still, I can't tell you we've resolved it, we fixed it. We have not. It's unfortunately, I love the next one of these. In April, I hope that's gone. I'd love to say that's gone, or I could maybe change something, say down or even or back to normal, something. I'm looking forward to that. So, as I said before, I'm going to hold the board comments at this board questions this time. This is public comment solely on what I just presented, not the transportation. So, Joyce, if you just want to ask if there's any public comment for right now.
I was going to read out the...
You can hold on that. This is just for...
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Are there any public comment on the second half of the presentation?
Any public comments?
So then we can
No.
open up for board questions.
Any board comments to my right? None? To my left? None? Okay, Mr. Feder, we're good.
That ends my...
Thank you. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. Complete copies of the rules that govern this portion of the meeting are available to the public at the back of the room, or you can obtain an advanced copy by contacting the board office during regular business hours. We reserve the right to limit each speaker to no more than 3 minutes. It is our plan to listen to each member of the public. We will note all questions and comments made. Once all questions and comments made from all members of the public are made, the Board of Education will respond, if necessary, to questions or comments in the most timely and efficient manner available. Please consider not repeating comments and questions made by other members of the public. I ask you that you state your name, place of residence, or your group affiliation Mr. Pulowski, any?
We have no pre-registration.
Thank you. So this is public comments on agenda items only. Anybody?
Excuse me. They're allowed to make comments on your presentation right now, though,
Yeah,
right?
that's agenda.
Right.
Hi, good evening. Caroline Gerges, Kendall Park. Thank you for clarifying if it was about the busing. I did have a question. The presentation highlighted a possible later start time for high school. I know this is prior to the survey study, but how does this impact the start time for elementary and middle in terms of what the Transportation Committee is looking at and how they're looking at the budget and then consolidating route plans and such?
Do you mind if I answer?
Of course, thank you.
Sure, thank you for that. So one of the things we started with the committee right off the bat was what your question is alluding to. You can't just change one thing. So no matter how you look at it, if we were to move any one thing related to the times, which we have to, it has an impact on other dominoes. So what we don't know yet is the exact impact, because that's going to depend on what we actually do at the end. It could mean a later start time for one school, an earlier start time for a different school. Things could change. It could be minor. So what we do know, no matter what, are the 7 elementaries and Dayton and Deans will be at the same time.
Okay.
So that does mean, without question, someone's changing, right? It's either the 5 schools are moving closer to them, they're all moving somewhere else. The 2 schools are moving closer to them, but they all will be, they all will be at the same time. No matter what we do, no matter what else comes out of this, that's a definite.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have the answer you're probably looking for, which is, well, tell me what.
No, I understand, but I'm assuming it's going to be earlier if high school's later? Or that's just not an assumption that can
You
be made
shouldn't
at
assume
this
anything
point?
yet.
Okay.
Just assume that we're looking at possibilities and how they impact all sorts of issues. If you remember, one of the goals of the work was you don't want to lose things for kids.
Like
So whatever you do, you want to make sure that you still can maintain your programming options for kids.
Like the music programs that happen before school and all that? I'm assuming.
Whatever there are, right? All the
Yeah.
extracurriculars are all
Yeah,
they
okay.
start earlier, they go later.
Yeah,
Those
understood.
things are all potentially impacted by certain decisions.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that and see, are there possible solutions? We actually have someone in the audience right now who had some very creative thoughts on certain ways to solve certain problems. So we're looking, we're trying to figure it out. We have some ideas, we've narrowed it down to very, very doable possibilities for the most part. Some have more challenges than others, but that's what we're looking at now.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It is. My presentation's on the agenda.
So speaking of the devil, what's that? Yeah. So I'm Alec Wallen. I have a son here in the 7th grade. He decided to come with me to experience the governance of the Board of Education in the South Brunswick School District. So I want to say I'm not sure that this is the right time to make the comment I want to make, but I do want to at least plant a seed in favor of one of the options. I want to also say at the beginning, and I can put my glasses on, I'll get my mask off, it won't fog, that I appreciate very much how Superintendent Feder has approached the Transportation Committee, which I've been serving. I think it's done a really masterful job of gathering information and considering options, and I'm here just to make a brief comment in favor of one of the options. Again, perhaps this is premature.
Let me just stop, Alex.
Please.
Don't get too specific. Okay?
Well,
We haven't released
what the options
all
are.
that, but you can talk about the concepts that you're hoping get accomplished, if you like.
I
How's
will.
that? Is that fair?
Fair. I will do my best. And if I seem to be saying anything too specific, you can say stop. Okay. So let's start with this. It's well documented that the biological clocks of high school students shift later. I'm going to quote from an article in the Psychiatric News from 2017. It is, quote, hard for most teenagers to fall asleep before 11 p.m. Moreover, quote, insufficient sleep boosts teens' risk of depression, use of alcohol and other substances, suicidal thoughts and attempts, and overall mortality, end quote. And to address this, the CDC, together with the American Medical Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and other groups have endorsed starting middle and high schools at 8:30 or later. So my concern, the reason I'm standing here right now, is that I fear that the commitment to other values, which I also embrace, values of music and sports, which my son has participated in, and I love it that it's there. And of course, the time needed for education, that those will somehow be given undue weight in the considerations. There was one option, and I won't say anything too specific now about it. I've just lost my screen. That's bad. My thing powered off. Anyway, I'll just go extemporaneously. There was one option, and only one of the four which are being considered, I don't think it's too much to say there were four being considered, that comes close to providing what the CDC required. And I know I'm allowed to send an email to the board, so I will be sending all of you an email explaining in some detail why I think this option is actually the best option and not incompatible with respecting these other values that are very important. There was something else I wanted to say. I guess, let me say this. I think it's easy for us to operate from the basis of what we experience ourselves. You know, how did we do going to school if we went to school early? How do our kids do if they went to school early? Are they doing fine? That's fine, right? But one of the things we know is that not all kids are doing fine. And put it this way, if you follow the science with regard to COVID, and don't take ivermectin, but think that vaccines are important, you should follow the science with regard to just how hard it is on teenagers to have to get up early when their biological clocks make them want to sleep late. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Rashmi, and I live in Princeton Walk, and I have a 10th grader right now, and I am definitely for starting high schoolers at a later time, and COVID was actually a good proof when they didn't have to get up early to catch the bus. They slept even that half an hour extra time. They were more relaxed and refreshed, and although they did not enjoy the Zoom sessions much after a period of time, they did get into Zoom fatigue, but that extra sleep mattered a lot. So I would certainly, vote for that. And another option, like one of the thoughts I had was, is it possible to cut down the blocks, the 4 blocks they have, by 10 minutes a block? Hope it doesn't make too much of a difference in the instruction time. That already pads a 40-minute extra time, which can be, added to the later school time. And they can at least catch a healthy breakfast, which we all know that, that's the brain meal, that the brain food at the morning breakfast time. And my kids barely get time to eat breakfast. I keep it on the table, they grab a bar and go, sometimes not even. So that'll help with all that. And knowing high schoolers, they go in the bathroom and it looks like there is a corn maze in the house. I need to find out, why they get lost once they go in. So it gives them a little extra time for all their work in the morning and be more relaxed when they come to school, rather than be rushed. So I hope you'd consider cutting that 10 minutes in each block. Hopefully that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So, okay. Is this close enough to the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm his son. So,
Do you have a name?
yeah, my name's Ami. I'm in 7th grade, and, my school start time is okay, but I think going into high school, it's going to be a lot harder to be able to get up at like 6:30 every day to be able to catch a 6:50 bus to get to school. So, I mean, I know this has already been said, but I really hope you guys can try and make it better for the students who really have trouble with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else in the audience? Seeing none? Well, so nice. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, which is the agenda review. And Mr. Pawlowski, would you like to take us through the agenda walkthrough?
Absolutely. So this past week, we sent out a board update. We have a very limited agenda, not a lot on that. I provided what I thought was sufficient for each motion within your update. If there's any questions or concerns, I'll hear them now, but for the most part, I feel like the update was sufficient. Do we have any questions?
Any questions to my right? Nope. Any questions to my left? No. Seeing none, Mr. Pawlowski. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the old business. We have the tabled item that has been there for board comments. We had agreed previously that that would be discussed at the retreat. The retreat has been scheduled for March 3rd. Unless there are any comments to my right about board comments? To my left about board comments? No? Okay. Moving on to the next item is transportation school start times, which I know Mr. Feder has covered, but in case he would like to say anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Feder. And the next item on old business is board committees. So do we have any comments about board committees to my right? To my left, Dr. Raj.
Thank you, Madam President. Right now, it is in the first meeting in February, and we have not had any committee meetings yet. And it is very confusing as to if we really have the committees in place or what is the status, when can we start, when can the committees start meeting. It's quite confusing. If you could throw some light, it will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raj. Would you like to take that question, Mr. Feder?
Not a question. This is a work session. So for the board, as you remember, we moved to this model for the purpose of being able to discuss matters.
Yes.
This is an open matter at this point, board committees. So in building the agenda and speaking with Joyce and Mike, this was an important topic for the board let's try and figure this out. My recommendation is you do not leave this room until you have complete, full committees.
Yes.
That's my recommendation to the board. I cannot help you get there at this moment, but Joyce, this is your show.
Yes.
So hopefully you're going to get this done now. So I'll give you 3 minutes.
So we have had a very productive meeting. Mrs. Rogers, Mr. Scaletti, Mr. Nathanson, and myself, just to tie up the last bit of the committees. There has been a little bit of a change in the committees. Mr. Scaletti has requested to join the policy committee. Mr. Nathanson will stay exactly where he is, and Mrs. Rogers to be chair of curriculum committee. And now with the negotiations at large, I just like some help from the board in letting me know if there are any board members here who would like to support the negotiations committee. That is the one that's really outstanding.
I just want to clarify.
Yes.
In our meeting, you discussed, based on what you just said.
Yes.
You discussed you're going to take the role as a president, being able to go to every committee, but you're not going to be designated on a committee. Is that correct?
So, Mr. Nathanson, that's exactly what I just said a
Okay.
minute ago.
I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes. So that's why the policy committee and the curriculum, that's why I just said just now. Thank you, Mr. Nathanson, for that question. Mrs. Rogers?
Question. In past conversations, there was discussion that you had mentioned that you wanted to talk to the lawyer.
Yes.
About this. Have you received any information?
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Rogers, for that question. We have received an email from our attorneys giving us the green light to go ahead with the negotiations committee and the format of that committee and how it can be, how it doesn't have to be in the traditional way that it was in previous years, which I had discussed with you. And I think that now we have the confirmation from the attorney. I have shared that with Mr. Feder.
Joyce, can you, not everyone knows everything. So what exactly has the attorney shared that specifically?
Thank you, Mr. Feder. So the attorney has said that basically that we can dissect, if I can use that word, the negotiations committee into
Bifurcate.
Oh, bifurcate. That's very nice. Very nice. So we can separate the negotiations committee into the separate bargaining units that we have. We will be having 9 bargaining units this year, and that there should be one person who is consistent on all the 9 committees. But apart from that, we can actually separate the main union, the teachers' union, into a committee, and we can have separate board members that attend the various committee meetings, the union meetings. Is that fair? Right, so if there's any,
Madam President?
tell me, Mr. Scaletti.
First I'd like to say thank you for all the committees. I know I stated at the last meeting that due to personal reasons and work and everything like that, that I would not be able to be part of the negotiations. But seeing that we've been having trouble putting committees together,
Yes.
you and the Vice President, that I would like to say that I will be there to help. I will, and I have arranged a lot of my personal commitments to be able to work with the negotiating team. I think it's an important duty as a board member. We owe it to our staff and our community. So I have arranged some of my personal stuff to help out with negotiations this year.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Scaletti. That's very much appreciated. And I thank you, because we had that conversation, and I now know how difficult that was for you to do that. So I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Madam President?
1 second, Mrs. Rogers. Mr. Nathanson, sir?
Yeah, based on what Joe was saying, and, I did the same after the meeting the other night, and I went back to my schedule, and based on, Joe definitely hit it on the head that, it's important to the community, it's important to the staff, it's important to the administration, it's important to us that we have some experienced people on the negotiation committee. So I would, if I'm on this one, it'll be my 18th year negotiating for this board and this district. So I am now freed up based on your new rejigging of what's happening, and we can work out who goes where, but I will be able to serve on the negotiating.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Nathanson. It's very much appreciated. I really appreciate all the thought and consideration that you've put into joining this committee. And just to let you know, personally, I'm very grateful. And this is a very important work, and we definitely need hands at the table who are knowledgeable, who have expertise, who've been doing this for a long, long time, and that would be a great asset to this committee. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Rogers?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, actually. I just want to make sure I understand a couple of things. So the comment that you made earlier was that 9 unions and that one consistent on all.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean?
So that was the advice that was given by the attorney, to say that one person from the board should, this is just the advice, should, for consistency, be present at all 9 bargaining unit meetings.
So if, okay, I'm just trying to work it out in my head,
Yes,
if you don't mind.
yes.
So if you have 9 units, are you, I'm sorry. 8 units, that's what I thought. It's okay. So let's stick with the 8. If we have 8 units, let's just, I'm going to make a hypothetical here, okay? Because this is a working session and we're talking this through. I want to make sure that the community understands that, and I keep losing my ID. If you have, say, Mr. Scaletti, I'll just use him as an example. Thank you, Joe, for Mr. Scaletti. Let's just make a hypothetical. He's on the SBEA, and then there's 2 other individuals on SBEA, whoever those 2, we'll just say A and B.
Yeah.
But if I understand Mr. Scaletti correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that you would be available, but you're not sure yet how many, or you would be willing to say 1 or 2. Let's, hypothetically, let's just use 2. You want to be on 2 committees. But those other 2 individuals may not be on the other 2 committees. So now, the next union that comes up, and I'm going to pick on the bus drivers because they're sitting in the audience. If he's not on that union, or the other 2 individuals are not on that union negotiations, there's no consistency. So how do we fix that? Would it be you that would be all 9?
I have given that as a suggestion. I mean, if any of the other, any board member would like to be on that, please,
Okay.
reach out. That's not a problem at all.
Okay.
But yeah, just for
But if that's
consistency, I've suggested
right,
that.
because that was the issue, right?
Yes.
That the availability of one individual
Yes.
as chair for all 9. So if you're the one that is identified, hypothetically, right, as the one that's on all 8, we can look at not having to be on all 9.
Exactly. The reason why we went this route is just because of the emails that we had received about time constraints.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is take the pressure off so that it's not that burdensome for
Right.
any 1 or 2 members.
Okay, that
and then
is
we get
important.
the support, and we're very, very grateful to have a brilliant and amazing board here, and other board members have also
Right.
stepped up to say that they would be willing to support.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So if I throw my hat in the ring,
Yes,
I can look at, because you understand my situation at home.
I do.
Having to do 9 union meetings is an extremely amount of time. And given the situation that I have at home,
Yep.
I've got to balance that. Now that I'm on 2 committees, the facilities and curriculum, I want to make sure that I can juggle, if you will. So I have to have conversations with my family, but if I can have maybe, I don't know how many, it depends, I can handle a couple.
Yes.
I can't handle all 9, like we originally talked, but I could definitely handle a couple, and given that that's the new approach, that we can divide it up, that's a lot. I think it's more amenable to everybody on the board, because having done them or sat in them, it's a lot of time. A lot of time is given to the 8 unions. So, okay, I can definitely give you some time. I don't know yet how much.
It's okay.
Or how many unions I can work with, but
Thank you.
I'll join Joe. I think, Joe, thank you for doing that. I think you gave an an introduction to how we could do this. And Joyce, of course, yes. But, yeah.
Thank you so
All right.
very much,
We'll
Mrs.
figure
Rogers.
this out.
It's very,
We'll-
very
yeah.
appreciated.
I don't know, do you want to, and this is just a question for
Yeah.
you. Did you want to leave tonight, Scott, with understanding who is on each union? Is that a goal or no?
My recommendation to the board is you do not leave this room
Okay.
until you are done.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Mr. Keener?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Miller. So just to make sure that I have it all correct, do you have a breakdown? Obviously, we're still working on negotiations, and you're going to take the chair of negotiations. Do you have a breakdown of the other committees? Who's on what committee, just so we all know?
Yes, so pretty much everything else stays the same as the committees I had released you, except save Mrs. Rogers, as I had mentioned at the beginning of these conversations, and Mr. Scaletti, right? Everything else stays the same for the committee structure and the liaison positions, and now it's just the negotiations.
Right, and
that we need
but like
to.
say, who's on curriculum? Do you have it written down that we can, who would be on curriculum? Yeah,
Let's take a moment to do that.
that way we're all on the same page.
I have it.
Oh, thank you. It's being passed out, Joyce, if you want.
Oh,
Dave
okay,
has one.
great.
Thanks. Yeah, how did that work?
It doesn't work with a mask.
It's definitely germ-free.
This was the original that we received, so you might want to make the Lisa and
Yes.
Joe changes.
And Mr. Pulowski, thank you so much for doing this evening.
So then, would we just hand it out? This is the new structure?
No, this is the old one.
This
Okay,
is the
so
old
that's why. So, Ms. Mather, who would be on budget?
1 second. 1 second. Budget doesn't change. It's just curriculum that I've added Mrs. Rogers in, and policy that I've added Mr. Scaletti in.
Where did Joe go?
Mike is, I'm sorry, Joe is taking
Yeah.
policy, the second column over. Top one. Chair is Mike, Deepa is on policy, and now that will be Joe in place of Joyce.
So can I? Yes.
So you're taking yourself off of policy completely, and you're taking yourself off of curriculum completely?
Yes.
And she's going to be ex officio.
Correct. That's
Okay,
right.
so right now, for negotiations, I have Mrs. Rogers' name, I have Mr. Nathanson and Mr. Scaletti. Are there any other board members who would like to support Dr. Raj? Thank you so much. Anybody else? Mr. Krishna, thank you so much.
Oh, Raj.
Yep.
Anybody else? Seeing none? Thank you.
So who do we have?
Of course, Mr. Scaletti.
8 units, please.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, 1 second. Okay, so for budget, we have Mr. Nathanson as chair, Mrs. Scott.
Unions.
No, the union.
Oh.
No, the unions, I'm sorry. That's okay.
SBEA, the bus union,
Yeah,
SBEA.
I
You don't
have
know
the-
them all?
Mr. Pulowski?
You want me
Would
to-
you have the list?
You want me to jump in on that?
Yes, please.
You'd have the teachers, you'd have the bus drivers, you have maintenance, you have paras, you have secretaries.
Yep.
1, 2, 3,
Head custodian.
5. Head custodians, supervisors, and admin.
And admin.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Wow,
6, 7,
that's pretty awesome.
And who do we have? Raja, Joe, I'm sorry, I'm using first names.
Let me
Okay.
just repeat. So negotiations right now, I've got Mrs. Rogers, Mr. Nathanson, Mr. Scaletti, Dr. Raj, and Mr. Krishna.
Okay, I'm missing one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who did I miss? Dr. Raj, Mr. Nathanson, Mrs. Rogers, Mr. Scaletti. Miss- Oh, okay, so that's 5.
Five.
Oh, yeah, okay. Great. That's this hand.
Are there any other questions to the right? Any questions to the left?
So does it mean that the committees can start scheduling meetings?
Yes, that is my understanding now.
Thank you.
You have maintenance as custodians? Is also custodians, right? Okay, 'cause I-
Yes.
okay. So I can do that.
Okay, so moving on now to new business on the agenda, and that is.
Excuse me,
Oh.
Madam President.
Oh, okay.
Is it my understanding that tonight we want to fill all this?
Yeah.
My recommendation to the board is you do not leave this room until this is done.
Thank you.
I can say that again in 20 minutes, but until this is done, if we're going to continue, I've already spent half my life in the last month on this. That is unacceptable. That the superintendent at my salary has been doing this work for the last month. I do not want to do this work anymore, so I would like to spend my time on teaching and learning.
So with that said,
So my suggestion is, do not leave this room until you have decided how the board is going to handle negotiations this year.
So I will start.
yes, Mrs. Rogers.
I cannot, well, not that I cannot, but I have a conflict of interest
Yep.
when it comes to head custodians.
Okay.
So my name cannot be in that box,
Understood.
okay? Because I have a
Yes,
conflict of interest.
that's fine. So let's do it this way. Shall we start with the teachers' union? And anybody who wants to?
I'll take it.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Anybody else? Mrs. Rogers? Mr. Scaletti?
No.
Okay. Mrs. Rogers, that leaves you.
No, you have 2 others.
Yeah, they're all looking at you.
You have Smith, what about Smith and Raja? Let's see. I'm going to hold right now on teachers.
Okay.
How many do you need? 2 or 3?
We need
For each, right?
at
2?
least, my,
Ideally, you want people that can listen, can contribute. In this case, we have new members that will be learning as well, which is important. Your minimum would be 2, but ideally you'd have 3. We've always had 4. So, take what you can get at this point.
so.
I can help you with a little bit. Let me make a suggestion.
You got one raising your hand down there.
Thank you,
I'm
Dr.
not
Raj.
conflicted. I'm personally not conflicted in negotiating with the supervisors and the administrators.
Brilliant.
So I would be very comfortable taking those 2 and bringing along some of our newer members that do not have experience. One of those people at that end, if she's interested.
Thank you,
I can
Dr.
grab
Raj.
Smitha. How about that guy up there? I'll take the guy up there.
Thank you.
And Deepa, you didn't raise your hand, but I'd like to bring you along if you're willing. So think about that, but I'd like to bring you
You're
along
the best.
to join me with Raja, Smitha, and you.
That's not
The
your-
time is manageable, even if it's just one of those units. So you can think about that. And yeah, okay.
Thank you.
What's this, maintenance?
Okay. So,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
for the supervisors and for the administrators, we have Mr. Feder, we have Smita, we have Raja and Deepa for both of those.
I could do supers and admins.
Okay.
We're set there.
No.
Oh, you're set there? I
Yeah.
thought there was an
No,
opening.
we're set.
So supers and admins, who are they again?
Deepa Raja Smitha.
For both of those?
And
Yeah.
Scott.
Cool.
I don't count, but I'll be there.
Deepa
Okay.
Raja Smitha for supers.
All right, so now that's left, I mean, the teachers' union is the biggest one, to be honest. That's where I need the most help from experienced board members.
I could take on Paris.
Okay?
I could do, wow. I could definitely do two.
Okay,
Secretary, I could do secretaries of Paris if you want.
okay.
Head custodians and maintenance.
Thank you so much. Joe, head custodians and maintenance.
And I'll stay on the teachers and I'll do the bus drivers. So.
Thank you so much. Okay, so basically, apart from myself, we only have one person, Mr. Nathanson, on the teachers' union. Can I ask anybody else for help on that? Okay, thank you, Smita. Thank you so much. For the. No, I know. For
Yeah,
the-
it just should be, it might be helpful for the community to understand.
The conflict.
Ray and Mike are silent because they have to be silent. They are both conflicted and cannot negotiate.
Thank you, Mr. Feder, for that explanation.
So could you just give us a quick review where are we right now?
Sure. So
It's a
right
different story,
now,
Mike.
for the teachers' union, we have Mr. Nathanson and Dr. Raj. For bus drivers, we have Mr. Nathanson. For the maintenance, we have Mr. Scaletti. Paras, we have Mrs. Rogers. Secretaries, we have Mrs. Rogers. Head custodians, we have Mr. Scaletti. And supervisors and administrators, we have Dr. Raj, Rajakrishna, and Deepa.
Okay.
For both of those.
Okay.
So my kind of last question, Mr. Feder, right, is that we only have for the bus drivers, maintenance, paras, and secretaries and head custodians, we only have myself and the other board member. Would that suffice? Okay, all right.
As long as you tell me we're done, it suffices for me.
No,
Is
because, you know.
Well, I just
Yeah.
want to ask a question, because normally, normally, in the past, there was 3 on each.
Right,
So are you saying we don't need 3 on each now?
that was just the question. I was
There's no rule,
Okay,
so,
but 2 would be, I would imagine,
I mean, you could do it. Like I said, we used to have 4, and those same 4 people did all the units,
Right,
which was, an overwhelming, especially for volunteers. The 4 of us do this, but this is our jobs.
Yeah,
So for us,
yeah.
negotiating with all the units is what we do for a living.
yeah.
yeah,
For volunteers,
It's
it's
different.
reasonable that, not everyone can handle that volume of work. And this year has met, a challenge where people's lives are their lives. So if you're able to get 2, remember, for all of these, you do have David and I who consult with the board. We're both conflicted to negotiate. We consult with the board.
yeah,
And Jen and Kim, who are not conflicted, will be in the room. So you'll still always have an attorney. You'll have 5 people if you have 2 negotiating.
So, Mr. Feder, last question, right? Out of these unions, okay, where the bus drivers, maintenance, paras, secretaries, and head custodians is concerned, are any of these larger or would require more than 2 members to serve on there?
It doesn't really work that way with that question doesn't really work.
Okay,
They all have an equal value to the district, meaning we have to take care of all of our staff. So
I
I don't
meant-
look at any one group
No,
and
but I
say,
meant-
well, that group doesn't need 3, or that, I wouldn't, that to me would be
no.
not right.
Okay, so what I meant to say is, remember, this is the first time that I'm doing this. This is the first time that I'm serving on negotiations, right? So I need some guidance as to, if you say that that would suffice, then we are good to go with negotiations. The committee is formed. But if not, I need
Again,
guidance.
you're safer with 3 in case someone cannot be there.
Okay.
So if you think about it, it doesn't mean everyone's going to be able to be at every single meeting. It's very complex. Some of these things can go on for months
Right.
and multiple meetings even in a week.
Right.
And sometimes those meetings don't end until the wee hours of the morning. So
Understood.
just consider that.
Thank you. Mrs. Rogers?
Yeah, so I may have written this down wrong. If I did, please let me know.
Yeah.
But I have supers and admin with Smitha, Raja, and Deepa,
Yes.
correct? Okay, so there's 3 on those 2 committees.
Yes.
That's the one thing that we could address. We can move one off of that. The other thing is, there's no experience on that one.
Right.
On which one?
Supers and admins.
There is.
And then
I'm going to use that
he's going to
opportunity.
steal all our money.
I'm going to use that opportunity to have, all 3 are new to negotiations.
Okay, so that's the goal there
So they'll be
too.
working with me.
Okay.
And I think that'll be enough.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that to highlight, okay? Thank you for
Okay,
that.
and Mrs. Rogers, I've got you down for the paras and the secretaries. Is that okay?
That is correct.
Are there any others that you would like to join? No. Mrs.
I
Kartik?
can't right now.
It's okay.
I know I could do 2 without
Okay.
consulting
I had to
home.
ask, right? I had to ask.
I'd have to talk to my family.
Thank you,
Because we
thank
have to
you.
adjust
I
our lives.
understand, Mrs. Rogers,
to cover
completely.
that.
Trust me, I understand.
So we can move on.
One second, Mr. Nathanson, 1 second. Mrs. Kartik, please.
This is the first time I'm doing this as well, so please bear with me. I have a quick question regarding, the process in negotiation. So in terms of contract vetting, etc., is that the responsibility of the board members who are sitting on those committees?
Now, so the administration put together the proposal, the vetting, I think that's what you asked?
Yes.
So we vet the initial contract. We put together a proposal to present to the negotiations committee. And at that point, we go over all of that. From there, we do what's called an exchange of proposals. You meet with the unit you're working with. They have a proposal. You have a proposal. You exchange the proposals. You evaluate the proposals. And at that point, you come back and you actually begin the negotiation points within there. So let's say that we put, we want all people of the unit to wear hats. And they're like, well, we don't want to wear hats. So instead we'll wear scarves. It just becomes, that's very mundane, and I'm not belittling the challenge of this, but I don't want to use anything real. That becomes how it works. So you figure your first meeting is probably an exchange of proposal and a handshake as to welcome. We are very civil. We try to stay as civil throughout the process. And doesn't mean there aren't disagreements or things that we don't always, come together on so easily, but that's why you're negotiating. And each time you meet, the goal is to keep moving forward and eventually come up with an agreeable contract on both sides. But ultimately, to your first question is the admin do the vetting of the contracts, the evaluation of the proposals, and do a great deal of that work along with the lawyer. The lawyer also is part of that, specifically for the NJEA units. The supervisors and administrators, we only use an attorney at the end to make sure the language is clean and make sure everything's what it needs to be. Does that help, Deepa?
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question to
Sure.
that. So I understand, the first step to this is exchange of proposals,
Mhm.
right? So that's the key step, I'm going to call that. And where are we in this process? Have we exchanged proposals yet or not yet?
No. So what we've done is the admin team has created a proposal. The lawyer is putting that into the legal process. We will then meet. This is for the SBEA. That's the first one we're meeting with, the teachers. That one is scheduled to begin on Tuesday night, and then we will exchange proposals. So all of that happens before you exchange proposals. So those committees, so for example, if you're working on the supervisors, we will have a proposal, they will. Before that proposal goes to them, we will have already spent all the time making sure the members of the committee fully understand what's on the contract and the proposal.
So those are pre-meetings, right?
Say that again?
Those are pre-meetings, pre-negotiation meetings that you're going to have with the board members
Yes.
involved.
Yes.
And that has not yet occurred, right?
No, we haven't, no, we've only begun on the SBEA, the teachers, none of the other units yet.
All right. Okay.
So there's nothing's been missed yet.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to understand what the end-to-end
Yep.
process looks like.
Yep.
Thank you, Mrs. Carty. Mrs. Rogers?
Because this is a new structure, okay, this is going to sound like an odd question, but let's just assume for a second, you know, we receive something from the paras. I speak with Dave, the BA, to discuss it. If I feel that I need to reach out to another board member to discuss it, will I be able to?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If I feel that I just need to discuss the thought process behind a particular item in the negotiations, and I just want to have a conversation with, say, you know, I don't know, Mr. Scaletti.
Someone who's not on the committee?
Yeah. I
No.
can't, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
Rogers.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, because it's a new structure.
Thank you. Anybody else? To my right? To my left?
Yeah. So I see that on paras, I think it's Lisa and yourself. If you need another helping hand, I can put my.
Thank you so much, Deepa. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you for offering.
So it's going to be paras, secretaries, and super, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that. So I think.
Oh, just paras?
I think we're good to go.
Just paras. Got it. Thank you. Damn, I thought I had it for two.
Yeah, numbers.
That's okay.
So bus drivers.
Moving on to the next item in the agenda, which is new business, and the topic for discussion is masks in school, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Feder.
So anyway, this is your first opportunity to discuss the matter. That's why this is a work session, a reminder. This is an open conversation. As I've shared with you in writing pre-meeting, in an update, I will share it here. And I mentioned it during my presentation, the concept of what happens when you remove masks. Right now, there's a rule that is applied. The rule is if a student is masked and is 3 feet away from another student, vaccination doesn't matter here. Well, in a way it does. If you're an unvaccinated student and you are next to 3 feet apart from a COVID positive person, but both of you have been masked, right now you are not considered a close contact. There is no need to quarantine. As soon as the masks are off, if that rule does not change, then it becomes 6 feet for all unvaccinated students around the COVID positive. Right now, none of those students on a bus or in a classroom are being quarantined. That would all change. So that's a consideration just to understand. We have to move in unison. If we're going to change masks, we want to look at the policy and the practice associated with quarantines and close contact and contact tracing. Just keep that in mind. But what you should discuss is thoughts on masks, if you want to at this point. Anyone has any ideas? If not, you can also do it at the next meeting. But by March 7th, when is the first board meeting in March, Dave? Okay, okay, the 10th. So, I mean, you kind of want to be ready to move by the next meeting, or at the latest by that March 3rd board retreat, and be able to, have an answer to this. You don't want to keep this lingering, and I guarantee the longer you keep this lingering, the more frustrated I would imagine our community will get. It's my guess from previous COVID-related matters.
Mr. Feder,
Yes.
would you mind if we table that so that we could have that for full discussion in our next board
You
meeting on the
can
24th?
choose however you want to go about it.
Well, why can't we talk about it now?
You want to talk about it now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so to my left, Dr. Raj. Okay, Mr. Nathanson.
Yeah, at this point, based on, everything I read, including Mr. Federer's article, I would be in favor of following what the governor is doing, but we also have to see, like Scott put in the article, we have to see the additional stuff that affects that. And we would have to figure out, what we would do. I know some of the other communities are actually doing their own thing. But if we make it, Scott, if we make it optional,
Yeah.
that would be an okay move?
Yes, you are allowed to decide to make the masks optional. Meaning, if a student or staff member, depending on how you go about it, chose not to wear a mask, then that would be totally fine.
Yeah, I would think, either way you want to put it, if a person, if a child or a staff member wants to wear the mask, they can. And I think that's probably the best way to go at this point.
Thank you. Dr. Raj?
I agree with Mr. Nathanson's sentiments. My logic behind it is that cloth masks that most of our students use, it's not very effective. Time and time again, we have seen studies and we have seen anecdotal evidence to support it. KN95 masks and N95 masks are supposed to work, but KN95 masks typically comes with a warning that says it is not meant for medical professionals. That means it might not be meant for places with heavy concentration of people and viruses, potentially places where the spread happens quickly, right, as in our schools as well. So the only option that really is effective is the N95 masks, and they're very expensive. And going by that logic, I don't see why we have a mandate on masks, including the cloth mask, that doesn't work. So that being the case, if people can afford it, if they want to go with the N95 masks, they can do it. If they want to wear cloth masks, that's fine too. So giving our community an option will be a good idea.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Thank you. To my right, Mrs. Rogers.
Yeah. So, given the fact that we get advance notice of obviously the agenda, I just did a little bit of research on my own, and first of all, let me say I'm all for getting rid of the masks, but I want to do so
safely,
with the science behind us, like what Dr. Raj just mentioned. And I want to make sure that the timing of this makes sense. My concern is somebody threw a dart for March 7th. I've yet to see any statistical information or data that supports why March 7th. Why not March 6th? Why not March 8th? It kind of reminds me of the standardized testing, right? Somebody threw a dart and said, well, 740 is a good score. So I kind of looked at some data, and this is just me, okay? This is nothing that says, it's approved, if you will. But, there's an article in the New York Times, which really it's frustrating because, and this was a February 8th article, and the heading is, with mask restrictions set to lift, a haze of uncertainty lingers. And in the article, there's many experts. One is a Harvard University researcher who feels it's appropriate to start lifting school masks. Another says it's too early. We're just getting it back under control. This is a respiratory virus researcher at the University of Pittsburgh. And it goes on, and you can read the article yourself. But it's back and forth, back and forth. So I took one extra step, and I spoke to the South Brunswick Township individual who's in the health area, Bob Ulick. Forgive me if I said the name wrong, because I was having difficulty getting information, and he supported me in finding the level of information that I was looking for. And this is what I would hope, quite frankly, that our Department of Education and Department of Health would be looking at to come to the conclusion of March 7th. But I highly doubt that it took place. And Scott and I I've had conversations with him about this as well, and based on his letter that he wrote. My concern is the date of March 7th correct? So looking back, I look at 4 key areas. January 13th, the 21st, this was 1.5 weeks after the break. We spiked. March 26th, 2 weeks after break. This was March 26th, 21. 2 weeks after spring break, we spiked. This is all on our, you could find it on the, actually I have it, the data dashboard, New Jersey COVID-19. 9/10, September 10th, 2 weeks, a week or so, excuse me, after we started, we spiked. January 7th, 2022, this just past January. Now, given Omicron decided to come and visit, we spiked. And then again, 2 weeks after the 3-day weekend, January 28th, we spiked even higher. So my concern is March 7th is still winter. We don't have an opportunity for kids or parents or family to be outside fully. We don't have an opportunity for some of our schools that have the ability to open windows, let fresh air in. So my concern is the date, not whether or not we go have an optional mask. It's the date that I'm concerned about. So I'll leave that there.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. 1 second. Mr. Keener, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Yeah, I understand everything you said, Lisa, but I don't think you can pinpoint any date is going to be correct.
Right.
And based off of a lot of other things, I agree with Mr. Nathanson and Dr. Smeta that once this comes out and they come up with the date, March 7th, and they say that schools do not have to be masked, I think we have to be able to give people the option to wear the mask or not. It's a personal option at that point.
But is every district following that rule? So for example, Newark, I believe, is saying they're not lifting.
But we're not every district.
No,
in South
I
Brunswick.
understand that. That's why I think the data is important. You know, possibly even having a conversation with our own Department of Health.
Mrs.
What do they
Rogers,
say? The CDC is coming out and saying.
So sorry to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I was responding to his.
So sorry.
I thought well, because he mentioned my name, I was able to speak.
Mrs. Karthik.
I agree with you.
Sorry.
What date is going to be acceptable? So that
Right.
could be debated. We could stay here till the wee hours of the morning.
Mrs. Karthik.
At some point.
Sorry, Mr. Keener.
President.
Waiting.
Yeah, I think my fellow board members made some very pertinent points. This is a complicated topic, and most of us have sort of been, in a way, our governor has taken care of it up until now, and I think now we are faced with, a situation where we have to make a decision for our community. I just have a couple of things to say. I think at this point, I don't know if we are going to be working towards a decision today, or if we would be afforded time to deliberate a little bit more and be more thoughtful about this decision. Right, that being said, I think there are a couple of considerations that we have to make. One is, of course, we've put this thought on the table of it being an optional choice. We let our students and our community sort of decide whether they want to wear the mask or not. I think at some point that also poses several complications for us. We have, we have a diverse community that we have kids who might be immunocompromised. We have to worry about them. We also have to worry about, the science and are we closely following it or not. And I hope, it is my hope that the Department of Health is looking at that very closely when they give their guidelines. And I'm also a little bit worried and concerned about the other softer aspects of this optional sort of choice, right? Because kids in school, we definitely don't want this to be another aspect where this it somehow impacts bullying or any discriminatory act of that kind, where a child who's wearing a mask is considered either weak or a coward or whatever that may be a lack of a better word. As opposed to a kid who chooses not to wear one, right? So we just want to be very mindful and thoughtful of when we make this decision together, and I hope there's some brilliant minds on this table, so we can all come together and deliberate this a little bit more.
Thank you, Mrs. Karthik. To my left, Mr. Scaletti.
Yes, thank Thank you. I appreciate everybody's input here tonight. When this first came out, I did get a few phone calls like, what do you think, what do you think? And, and I'm saying we, not just the board, not just Scott and his team, it's everybody, it's the whole community. We, as a community, with Jim Ryan working with Scott, with everybody working together in this whole town, we were pretty successful, okay? We were upfront, we were transparent with everything. And right now, this is something new. And there's a lot to it. And being fortunate enough to be on that transportation committee, you have one thing, and like Scott says, it affects 6, 7 things. We dealt with it 2 years ago when COVID first came out. Well, just do this. Well, then it affects this, it's this. So I think we have to look at a lot of different things. We just brought up about maybe bullying, okay? We also have to look at working hand in hand with our township, with our Middlesex County Health Department. Yes, we do go no mask, optional no mask, optional mask. However a parent chooses, that's fine. But we also have to set a benchmark too, that where if it does hit this, we're gonna go back. And to look at all the scenarios. So it's just not one thing, it's just no mask or no mask. There's a lot of moving parts to this. And I know that Scott, the way he has been with his team through this whole thing for the last 2 years now, has been able to work hand in hand with the township, hand in hand with the county. And I think what we need to do is, there's a lot of great ideas here, and yes, it's coming up again, like Transportation Committee, and this is gonna be moving kind of quickly as well, to maybe come up with a plan, and it's a plan of everything. It's break it down. We could do this, we could do that, we could do this. It sounds like, and I'm not speaking for the board, it sounds like everybody's pretty, hey, if a parent wants a child to wear a mask, wear a mask. If they don't, that's great. So it sounds to me like everybody's kind of on the same page, but now let's get a little deeper on what we do. And a lot of this, with the bullying, stuff like that, there's policy. Scott and Jen and David have put a lot of that into effect. So I think right now we just need to kind of take a breath, look at what we have, and maybe reconvene in a week. Maybe reconvene in a week. This is something big. This is almost 10,000 students and staff and everybody else that we can't just say, okay, we'll meet in 2 weeks and we'll be done with this. Because this might be something we have to maybe meet back and say, hey, let's look at some key ideas here. Just a suggestion for me.
Thank you, Mr. Scaletti. Mr. Nathanson?
Yeah, see, we're starting to make it too complicated. It's a very easy thing. The township has already removed their mandate, okay? That was done last week. So there is no township mandate anymore on any businesses or anything in town. That's been removed. The fact is that the governor has already said that he is going to talk to the state health department. He's going to come up with the guidelines behind it. And we're going to be in a situation that, and I don't want to put myself, this board, the community, the administration, into a situation that we're on the island by ourselves. By saying that we're going to allow the parent to make the decision whether their child should wear a mask or not, I think it's the fair thing for the community and such, okay? Now we're creating another meeting to come back to talk about this. It still hasn't played out at the state, so let's see what the governor does behind what he said. Mrs. Rogers, you brought up a good point. Okay, what makes the 7th the date? But every state is following now. Delaware, Connecticut, every state is starting to follow. The only one that hasn't yet is New York City, but every state has followed with a certain cutoff date, you know. So instead, the reason they came up with a cutoff date, and I heard their explanation, is they don't want to just say, okay, it's done, goodbye, it's done this second, and everybody can go and take their mask off. So they came up with a date, so they're saying, okay, you have a month to plan not to wear a mask. And that's basically why it was done. So, and the governor kind of said that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Dr. Raj?
I just want to add a rejoinder, sort of remind the assumption behind the mask mandates. It was supposed to be a protective measure to stop, to slow down transmission, right? That was the assumption, and Mrs. Rogers pointed out the spikes. So even if we were to assume that we are going to see a spike, given the information that we have now, that it's only the more expensive N95 masks and probably the KN95 masks that actually can help us slow down the transmission. So our mask mandates, if we have it back, it'll only make sense if we mandate for the right kind of mask. Not mandating the right kind of mask is as good as not having a mask mandate.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raj. Mrs. Rogers?
So, Barry, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with Ms. Raj, too, about the mask, the type of mask. My question, though, is still to the governor, why March 7th? What made the decision for that date? That's the issue that I want to understand. And to Scott's point earlier, just because we chose this date, how are we going to handle, I'm sorry, this is why I want to get rid of them. It's getting caught up. How are we going to handle when there's contact tracing now that 3 feet? So just because we think we should get rid of the masks on March 7th does not give us the opportunity to understand what are we going to do when there's a breakout in a classroom. How are we going to handle contact tracing for 3 feet? Are we going to do it? I don't know, because we don't know what we don't know, right? The old philosophical point, you don't know what you don't know. So if we don't have the data from the state yet, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, we don't know what the requirements are going to be. Is it going to change from 3 feet to 6 feet if you're unmasked? Is it going to stay the same? What happens when there's a breakout? Are we going to have to remask? How are we going to get people to remask? The guidelines for buses under federal law. Buses are under federal law. The children are going to have to wear their masks on the bus. So do we put our poor bus drivers in the harm's way when they have to deal with a parent that doesn't want their child to be with a mask? You know, so you've got to get communication. The communication has to be so strong to make sure that people understand that the buses have to have masks. When they arrive, they don't have to have masks. So there's so many different factors in this that I'm very concerned that if we, and I want to do this, believe me, I want the masks to be optional. That's not the issue. My concern is all the other factors, what are they? How are we going to handle them as a district? Before we could just move ahead and say, yep, March 7th, I'm good. We're going to do optional. I want to know all of the factors involved and how this district is going to handle things like contact tracing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Thank you. Anybody else to my right? Seeing none to my left. Dr. Raj.
Sorry about but, so the federal mandate on masking on buses.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to enforce it?
I know. That's the big question. Exactly.
Well,
We need a board member on each bus.
Any volunteers?
So we're doing it.
yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson, for that.
I'll volunteer you, Madam President.
Mr.
We'll
Keenan?
put Mrs. Rogers on every board bus. No, the thing that came out today is that the president knows about the mask mandate on the bus, and he is reviewing that at this point. And there's an assumption that because of all the states are coming up with dates, that he's going to most likely take the mandate off on the buses. But again, Mrs. Rogers, yeah, we don't know that yet.
Right, we don't know that.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson. Mr. Keener?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Miller. The point I wanted to make, it's only February 10th. We're looking at March 7th. There's still 4 weeks.
Right.
So we don't know what the final version is. We had a great debate, but we don't know what's going to happen. Oh, and there's another date, that's March the 8th, I think the governor's doing something too. It
Yes.
changed, didn't it?
Yes. That's actually, if I may have the floor, that's actually a very valid point. You know, we can't just say, okay, we'll do this. We don't know what is going to be coming down the pike. We can say we would like to do March 7th, but until we have more data, I will not agree to it yet.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Okay, thank you. Oh, Mrs. Karthik?
Yeah, just one last comment. Are we going to be able to sort of deliberate a little bit more on this so that when the time comes, we are better prepared with the options, we have been able to think through this and, you know, arrive at some possible ways that we're going to work this out? Or is this, the next 4 weeks are the only time frame that we have, right?
I mean,
And we don't have anything scheduled to talk about this.
yeah, you have the next meeting and you have a retreat scheduled. So you have, 2 more opportunities before the 7th. Nothing can change before the 7th. By then, we'll probably hear from the Department of Health. We'll probably hear nothing from the Department of Ed. That would be my guess. And to Barry's point, the president has, a month to realize in our world, he has the whole country to deal with. I would imagine that will change as well. So I'd imagine by, at least by March 3rd for our retreat, I would imagine you'll have everything you need to at least make a decision. And you'll have time to deliberate. At the next meeting, you can not table it, but you can put this on again as old business for next meeting. We can update the board and the community on where things have changed, what news. A lot will happen between now and February 24th. And that might be just enough information where you might want to make a motion to make a decision on the matter.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
If I may, that would also give the public an opportunity to have some comments on it as well, correct? On the if we do February 24th.
Public can get in their car right now and there's still time to make comments.
Thank you all for that robust discussion. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to the next action item here, and that's the approval of the consent agenda of February 10th, 2022. Mr. Pulaski, roll call.
Motion.
Motion. Can I have a motion, please, for that? Mr. Nathanson, thank you, and seconded by Dr. Raj. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call, Mr. Pulaski.
Mrs. Deepa Karthik.
Yes.
Mr. Raja Krishna. Mr. Ray Keener.
Yes.
Mrs. Joyce Mehta.
Yes.
Mr. Mike Mitchell.
Yes.
Dr. Smita Raj.
Yes.
Mrs. Lisa Rogers.
Aye.
Mr. Joseph Scaletti.
Yes.
Mr. Barry Nathanson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Pulaski. Moving on to board committee and liaison reports. I'm not expecting any because we have not started, but is there anybody to the right? No? Anybody to the left? No? Seeing none? Thank you. And moving on to our second opportunity for public comment on any discussion.
You don't have to read it again, does she?
Okay, I don't need to read it. So do we have anybody registered, Mr. Pulaski?
No, we do not. No registrations.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments? No? Seeing none, Mr. Pulaski?
None.
Thank you. So moving on now to move into executive session again for us. No. So I need a motion. Okay.
Hold on.
I need a motion to move to executive, please. Thank you, Mr. Keener. I need a second. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All in favor? Can I say all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good night, South Brunswick.